The story begins on a foggy night as Roy Anderson drives his rig along a remote stretch of highway in the southeastern United States. He's hauling a load to Savannah, Georgia, and the journey has been uneventful so far, but the oppressive weather and the thick fog have created an eerie atmosphere. The road is quiet, with no other vehicles in sight, and the darkness seems to press in from all sides. As Roy approaches the Savannah River, he sees the outline of an old iron bridge looming ahead, its steel girders barely visible through the fog. The bridge is long and narrow, with rusted metal railings that add to its foreboding appearance. A chill runs down Roy's spine as he remembers hearing stories from other truckers about strange occurrences on this bridge, tales of ghostly apparitions and unexplained accidents. Despite his unease, Roy continues onto the bridge, the truck's headlights cutting through the thick fog. The sound of the tires on the metal grating echoes through the night, creating a rhythmic, almost hypnotic pattern. As he drives, Roy feels a growing sense of dread, as if something is watching him from the shadows. Halfway across the bridge, Roy's radio crackles to life, but instead of the usual country music or trucker chatter, it's filled with static and faint, ghostly voices. He adjusts the dial, but the voices only grow louder, their words indistinct but filled with sorrow and desperation. The temperature inside the cab drops suddenly, and Roy can see his breath misting in the air. As Roy drives further onto the bridge, the fog thickens, enveloping the truck in an almost tangible shroud of darkness. The steel girders above seem to twist and warp in the mist, creating unsettling shapes that loom overhead. The bridge feels longer than it should be, as if the road ahead is stretching into infinity. Suddenly, Roy's headlights illuminate a figure standing in the middle of the bridge, a woman in a long, tattered dress, her hair obscuring her face. Roy slams on the brakes, his heart pounding, but when he looks again, the figure is gone. The truck skids to a stop and Roy sits frozen, his hands gripping the steering wheel as he tries to make sense of what he just saw. Before he can catch his breath, the truck's engine stalls and the lights flicker before plunging him into darkness. The silence that follows is deafening, broken only by the faint creaking of the bridge and the distant sound of rushing water below. Roy fumbles to restart the engine, but it won't turn over. Panic sets in as he realizes he's stranded in the middle of the haunted bridge. As Roy steps out of the cab to check the engine, the fog swirls around him, and he hears the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching. He turns to see the woman again, this time closer, her face still hidden, but her presence overwhelming. Behind her, more figures begin to appear, men, women, and children, all dressed in old-fashioned clothing, their faces pale and their eyes hollow. The spirits of the past are coming to life, and Roy is caught in the middle of their ghostly procession. The air grows colder, and the fog thickens, turning the bridge into a surreal, otherworldly landscape. The ghostly figures move with an eerie grace, their eyes locked on Roy as they pass by, their expressions a mix of sadness and accusation. Roy is paralyzed with fear, but as the apparitions pass, he starts to piece together the story behind the haunting. The bridge was the site of a tragic accident years ago. A bus carrying a group of people plunged into the river during a storm, killing everyone on board. The spirits of the victims have been trapped here ever since, reliving their final moments in an endless loop, unable to move on. The ghostly figures begin to close in on Roy, their expressions growing more desperate and their movements more aggressive. The bridge seems to groan under their collective weight, the steel girders creaking ominously. Roy knows he needs to find a way to escape, but the spirits seem intent on keeping him here, as if blaming him for their fate. Desperate to break free from the bridge's deadly grip, Roy tries to communicate with the spirits, pleading for understanding and offering his help to release them from their torment. He searches the cab for anything that might serve as an offering or a way to connect with the spirits. His hand lands on an old, weathered Bible he keeps for comfort on the road. Taking a deep breath, Roy steps out of the cab and faces the spirits, holding the Bible out before him. He begins to speak, his voice trembling at first but growing stronger as he recites prayers and verses meant to bring peace to restless souls. The spirits hesitate, their ghostly forms flickering and wavering as if caught between two worlds. As Roy continues to speak, the fog begins to lift, and the oppressive cold starts to dissipate. The ghostly figures slow their advance, their expressions softening as the words seem to reach them. The woman in the tattered dress steps forward, her face finally visible, a young woman with sad, dark eyes that reflect a deep sorrow. She raises a hand, as if to touch Roy, but just as her fingers brush his skin, her form begins to dissolve into the mist. One by one, the other spirits follow, their faces serene as they fade away, their anguish finally easing. The oppressive atmosphere on the bridge lightens, and the fog continues to lift, revealing the dark waters of the Savannah River below. With the spirits gone, the bridge is silent once more, the only sound the gentle lapping of the river against the supports. Roy breathes a sigh of relief, but the experience has left him shaken to his core. He returns to his truck, trying the ignition again, and this time the engine roars to life. The headlights flicker back on, illuminating the now empty bridge. Roy drives off the bridge, his heart still pounding, but as he reaches the other side, the air feels lighter, and the oppressive weight of the spirit's presence is gone. The road ahead is clear, and the first light of dawn begins to break on the horizon. As he continues his journey, Roy reflects on what he's just experienced. He knows the bridge will never be the same for him, a place forever haunted by the tragic past. He makes a silent vow to remember the spirits he encountered, and to be more cautious of the roads he travels in the future. The story ends with Roy pulling into the outskirts of Savannah, the city's lights glowing in the early morning mist. He's relieved to be back in the world of the living, but the memory of the haunted bridge will stay with him forever. As he parks his rig and steps out, he takes a deep breath, grateful for the warmth of the sun on his face, and silently thanks the spirits for allowing him to leave.